two things in Los Angeles: voter ID, so that the people have a chance to vote.
I think it's incredibly important that people know the truth, because it's very damaging when people believe such misinformation.
And I want to see the water be released and come down into Los Angeles and throughout the state.
Maybe the president just doesn't know that there's not a spigot that can be turned to solve all the water problems.
In this video today, President Trump is visiting North Carolina and California, but he drops bad news on Gavin Newsom because he still wants conditions attached to the disaster aid. And yes, Gavin Newsom did have something to say about that. And Trump did make a huge announcement about FEMA. These stories and more in this video today, but let's start with Trump speaking to the press outside of Air Force One.
President funding to Los Angeles because of its sanctuary city policy.
I want to see two things in Los Angeles: voter ID, so that the people have a chance to vote. And I want to see the water be released and come down into Los Angeles and throughout the state. Those are the two things. After that, I will be the greatest president that California has ever seen. I want the water to come down and come down to Los Angeles, and also go out to all the farmland that's barren and dry. You know, they have land that they say is the equivalent of the land in Iowa, which is about as good as there is anywhere on earth. The problem is it's artificial, because they artificially stop the water from going onto the land.
Okay, so that's President Trump on his way to North Carolina, and I'll show you guys clips of that in a bit here. But getting back to California, he's spot on. It is a simple kindergarten way of explaining the issue, but let me give you the actual details. The California residents did pass $2.5 billion bond to build new dams and reservoirs. It hasn't happened. That was all the way back in 2014. Secondly, the reason why it hasn't happened is because of red tape, bureaucracy, environmentalists, overregulation. Okay, that is a problem of California. And also, when you combine that with managing vegetation, which was around the Pacific Palisades, that is dry, not trim, it just inflames the issue even more. So when you put all those things together, Trump is spot on. We need to manage our water more. We need to expand the California aqueduct, which is at near capacity at this point, a very old water system. However, the media is not going to talk about that. They're going to continue to label everything that Trump says as misinformation. And that's exactly what Gavin Newsom did late last night when he responded to the story that Trump will be visiting, and that a lot of things that Trump is saying is false. Watch.
I think it's incredibly important that people know the truth, because it's very damaging when people believe such misinformation. And I don't mean it in a malign sense. Maybe the president just doesn't know that there's not a spigot that can be turned to solve all the water problems that he alleges exist, that don't exist, as it relates to the state water system here in Southern California.
So we're less than 24 hours away from his visit. You're saying you haven't had any contact with the White House at all?
Well, I haven't. I'm grateful, though, that he took our invitation to heart, and that he will be here tomorrow. It's my understanding. I look forward to being there on the tarmac to thank the president, welcome him, and we're making sure that all the resources he needs for a successful briefing are provided to him. There's no limit to the resources we'll provide for that briefing. And as I say, I'm grateful that he appears to be coming out.
Now, for the people in the back, you have to understand, Gavin Newsom will never trash the environmentalists that have had a chokehold on him during his entire governorship. Okay, he's not going to throw them under the bus. We know that. He's also not going to throw PG&E and SCE under the bus either, because they've been funding his campaigns as well. So who is he really going to blame? Well, the only person he can blame is either local leadership or Donald Trump. And that's what you're going to continue to see from him. And that's why Trump doesn't even take his calls, because he doesn't respect him as a leader. I find it so interesting how someone like Trump can smile and laugh with a Chuck Schumer, a Joe Biden, but he won't take Gavin Newsom's calls. I mean, I think that says everything, right? And that's why his answer to this question about when was the last time he spoke to President Trump, it just will blow your mind.
Clarity, when is the last time you talked to Donald Trump, either telephonically or in?
Well, I reached out to him right before he left the White House December for January 6th, and it was the first time I didn't get an immediate return phone call. I'd probably talked to him on a consistent basis every week or 2 weeks throughout most of his presidency, at least in my tenure. That was the last time. That was the last time, yeah. And I reached out to him after his election and before this incident. And so I continued to try to reach out. And I think you know this well, of a lot of relationships in the Trump world. A lot of relationships of trust. I communicate with a lot of folks around him, folks that have his ear and influence. I don't want, this is a sideshow.
All right, so that's what Gavin Newsom had to say. We know he doesn't have any credibility. And part of the reason is because he hasn't proven that he could take care of the basics as a governor. Homelessness, the high-speed rail, forest management, fire management. Why is it that California residents are paying all-time high electricity costs? Because he sold us out to PG&E and SCE. And then now you have the Pacific Palisades fire and that whole disaster. I mean, he's politically done at this point. All right, so at this point, he gets on Air Force One. He lands in Fletcher, North Carolina, and he sits down and has an actual disaster briefing about North Carolina. And he has some interesting words for FEMA.
Order on FEMA, getting rid of it. Can you say more about signing an executive order to get rid of FEMA, please?
FEMA has been a very big disappointment. They cost a tremendous amount of money. It's very bureaucratic, and it's very slow. Other than that, we're very happy with them. Okay, and I think when there's a problem with the state, I think that problem should be taken care of by the state. That's what we have states for. They take care of problems. And a governor can handle something very quickly. You know, one of the things I've noticed, because I've been doing this for a while, and we had a pretty good FEMA, but I also noticed that when they come, they end up in arguments, they're fighting all the time over who does what. It's just not a good system.
Okay, so we know the media is going to lose it over those comments, all right? So essentially what he's saying is he's open to issuing an executive order to dismantle FEMA because they actually add more to the problem than the solution when a disaster strikes. And why is that? Well, when I served in the military, it was similar, meaning you have too many people that have to say yes. You have too many chiefs and not enough Indians, if you guys understand the analogy there. Okay, so we're not the only ones that believe that FEMA needs to be reformed and that conditions should be attached to disaster aid for states who continue to prove that they're not willing to change their policies. Now, here's the former FEMA administrator agreeing with Trump on this particular issue.
I also wanted to get your thoughts, Craig, on Trump threatening to withhold federal aid to California unless the state adopts voter ID laws and changes its water policy. What's your reaction to that?
I think, if you're going to tie FEMA dollars to states doing something different, I'd focus on the things we know work to reduce disaster costs to the taxpayers, like stronger building codes and land use planning. I mean, a lot of what we're seeing in states, whether it's a red or blue state, is where we've developed and built in areas that we didn't adapt to what's happened, and we continue to see the losses grow. So I'm not opposed to putting strings on that taxpayer's money as long as it's tied to things that will reduce the future cost of disasters by holding states and local governments more accountable for the decisions they're making that in some cases continue to grow the risk.
That seems to make sense.
Now, of course, I'm going to show you an example of the media's initial reaction to this, because now what they're doing is they're going back to the famous rhetoric, Project 2025. Trump wants to get rid of the entire government and make it in his image, which there has to be some level of truth to that, because if FEMA is failing American citizens and that's their purpose in life, we should relook at that program and reform it and change it around. I don't see the problem with that, but I guess CNN doesn't see it that way.
Well, look, the states taking care of a disaster is that may be one thing, but states obviously cannot afford to take care of them themselves. But Dana, what this is, the bigger picture here is just one more example of, in the Trump administration, the dismantling of government agencies. I mean, this has long been a discussion by many conservatives. It was, the very pages of Project 2025, sort of dismantling and shrinking of FEMA and other agencies. So this is very much a real conversation that many would like to have. The question is, what would that actually do in a practical matter?
Okay, well, let's just use common sense. It should be on the state governors to respond to a disaster, and they should be prepared. They should be competent, like a Ron DeSantis of Florida, not a Gavin Newsom of California. And so regardless if FEMA is there or not, if the governors are incompetent, the citizens will still get screwed. Now, what's worse is when your governor is incompetent or the leadership is caught off guard, like in North Carolina, and FEMA is incompetent. It's all bad at that point. So I don't see the issue with having that debate, But the media is going to try to turn this into something that is truly not. And that is just exercising common sense about how these programs are managed and the fact that maybe they're doing more damage than actually helping American citizens. Now, Trump also had some funny comments because I want to make you laugh here. Here's what he said about Adam Schiff, because we know he is the congressman out of California. And so here's what he said.
Senator Schiff joined you on this trip and he was too busy. Are you disappointed?
I don't know. I was told that Schiff was going to travel with us to California. I wasn't thrilled, to be honest with you. And I saw him last night on television. It looks like he got hit with a baseball bat or something. What happened to him? Something happened to him. It looked like he got hit. It looked like he got beat around. But I'll ask Caroline to find out what happened to him. No, if he wanted to come out, I would have done that. But I don't know. Somebody said that he wanted to come on the plane, but I think he's staying back for the votes. There's some pretty good votes going on.
All right. So I thought that was actually funny because if you have seen the clip of Adam Schiff on TV last night, you would actually think the same. But let's get back to a more serious matter. So he's now at the actual or one of the sites where debris is still piled up. It's a neighborhood that was hit hard by the hurricane, and he's delivering on what he promised. And of course, as I always state, the media is never going to show you this side of Trump. But let's go ahead and take a look at what he said.
I promised that I'd come back to Western North Carolina to help the people of the state, and today here I am to deliver on that promise. And we have a lot of things in mind, and we're getting the Army Corps of Engineers all set. You need your riverbanks fixed. You need a lot of roads fixed, and we're going to get it done in rapid time. And I've asked Susie Wiles and all of my people to start calling up, get the Corps ready, and they're going to get ready to go. I don't know what it is. I don't know what took so long for the other administration. But remember, I wasn't here for the first 4 months or 3 months, whatever it may be. See, we can only start as of essentially 1 or 2 days ago. And we've made a lot of progress over the last couple of days, Michael. I understand we're going to get you the resources you need and the support that you deserve. And we'll be at your side through every step of the rebuilding. And no American is going to be left behind.
All right, so let's give credit where credit is due. Not even 1 week into Trump's presidency, and he's already visiting these hard-hit areas. And it's just great timing for those people out in North Carolina. My heart definitely goes out to them. Shout out to them, actually. Say a prayer for them. I hope a documentary is released about what actually went on. A lot of the stories have been suppressed. They don't want people to know how incompetent FEMA really was in that particular situation. But Trump is there, and he's going to make things right, and we have to give him credit for that. He's keeping his promises. Now, the other promise that he's been keeping is getting the illegal criminals out of our country. And one way that is happening is using military aircraft to get them out of here. And of course, the media, I don't know why they are doing this, but they don't like it. So, of course, we're going to debunk some of their lies. But let's first get a full picture of what's going on here.
During the Biden administration, we saw footage like this. The federal government flying migrants into the country under cover of darkness. Now, the Trump White House is posting pictures like these. Those are illegal immigrants being ushered onto deportation flights from Briggs Army Base in Texas. A defense official now telling Fox News, quote, "We can confirm that overnight, 2 DoD aircraft conducted repatriation flights from the United States to Guatemala." And here's the president just a short time ago.
Deportation's going very well. We're getting the bad, hard criminals out. These are murderers. These are people that have been as bad as you get, as bad as anybody you've seen. We're taking them out first.
Now, when you see the contrast between what Joe Biden was doing, flying people in, and then Trump flying people out, you start to see, okay, this makes sense. That's exactly what I would expect the new president to do, get them out of here. He told us he would do it. We have voted for him to do it. There's a poll showing overwhelming support from the American citizens that want this to happen. But for some reason, the legacy media does not get the message here because they believe that this is not actually what's happening. They actually question the authenticity of those photos. And let me just show you an example of that.
Your reaction to seeing these photos from the White House, they say that are military planes deployed for these deportations. And I guess one of the things that we should talk about, shouldn't the White House or the administration be giving some kind of access to independent journalists so we can witness this firsthand as opposed to getting these takeouts from the White House?
I mean, I think press access for this is going to be very important. But I think we also need to really try and get context and understand what is happening. One of the concerns about this is that they're really going to be targeting people in blue cities and blue states. That is different than what we saw during the first Trump administration, where they were doing raids in North Dakota and red states and rural areas. This seems to be targeted in places that are blue states. So what does that tell us? Does that tell us that this is politically motivated, that they're trying to instill fear in immigrant communities in blue areas as opposed to red areas? You know, all of these things, as we're looking at this enforcement operation, we have to really think about what it means and what is the administration actually trying to achieve.
Okay, so let me give you exactly what's going on here, okay? One side of the debate is so caught up in the semantics, their mind is in the weeds of everything. They're questioning every single part of this process instead of focusing on the end result, which leads me to the other side of the debate, which is Trump and the Republicans. They are focused on results. Like immediately, he made a promise during his campaign. He was elected on this as the top issue, immigration, and he's going to deliver something. Whether you disagree about how he's going about it, he's going to get results. And I'm a firm believer that Americans, all they really do care about is not the semantics. They care about results. Now, speaking of the delusion that is continuing to take place here, because as you've seen, she's all over the place with this. She believes that the military is not trained to support Border Patrol agents in this whole mass deportation operation. Listen to it for yourself.
Lou, I do want to ask you, the president has ordered the Pentagon to surge 1,500 active military troops to the southern border. We're also seeing these new images of military support away from the border. These are from Camp Pendleton in California. These are from New Mexico, some other images we can show you. And we're now learning that more soldiers are preparing for possible deployment to the border. And so, I mean, Lulu, this is something that, is a bit of a departure from what we've seen in the past, and that this is a very militarized looking deportation operation, mass deportation operation. What do you think?
I mean, this is very unusual. This is not the purview of the United States military. They don't have the training for it. But this is what the Trump administration is doing to try and bolster their capacity to deport people, because they haven't gotten more money from Congress for this. They don't have more ICE agents. And so they're trying to pull in other agencies to get involved in this deportation operation.
So my direct reaction to Lulu here from New York Times is, are you an expert on military operations? Have you served in the military? Are you an expert when it comes to mass deportation? Have you served on the border? Now, if this is what the leadership believes is the best pathway forward, also given that it's not actually going to cost taxpayers any more money because they're using the Department of Defense, which is money that has already been allocated, I would think you'd probably agree with that. But again, this is the problem with the media and what you're going to run into with people who are liberal as it pertains to this issue. They're more focused on amnesty, compassion for illegal criminals, not actual rule of law, border security, and holding people accountable. Now, let me show you an example of the scale of this operation and why it is so important that Trump is taking this very seriously. Because remember, there's about 1.5 million illegal migrants that have already been ordered to be deported from this country. It's just that Joe Biden never enforced it. Now Trump is doing that. And of course, Democrats are going to push back on this every single step of the way, which is ridiculous. But here's News Nation talking about this.
I mean, again, we're going to see a battle play out in the states, particularly in these democratically controlled states and cities. You're going to see this pushback from a number of those cities. I mean, I'm looking at Chicago, for example, San Francisco, Los Angeles. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, who Trump is going to meet with later today, has vowed to push back on this. But in some states like Florida, I see Miami highlighted on that map that was previously on the screen. Florida is a state under Governor Ron DeSantis, which has gone in the complete opposite direction, has said, hey, we will do anything. DeSantis has said, we will do anything to help the Trump administration going forward on this issue. Ron DeSantis calling a special session for later this month so the state legislature can work with the Trump administration. So we are going to see a patchwork of approaches across the country, depending on the politics of what we're seeing. But, make no mistake, there will be a battle.
And that's why you're seeing the media continue to try to tug on your heartstrings by bringing up family separation, by scaring people about raids into their workplaces, the schools, the churches, that American citizens will be arrested and deported, which is not possible. Now, is it a potential scenario where an American citizen could be detained during an operation where illegal migrants are being rounded up? Absolutely. It's just like anything else. If you're in the middle of a crime that is taking place, you're going to get detained. That happens all the time. But the media is not going to report it in that way, of course. So let's get your answer to this question in the comment section below. Do you believe that FEMA should be dismantled, reformed? Okay. Do you believe that they actually are not as supportive as they could be, especially when you're talking about large scale disasters, that they actually slow down the system because there's too many chiefs? Please let me know what you guys think about all that in the comment section below, and whether or not you agree with President Trump issuing an executive order to possibly reform the organization. Now, yesterday there was a big story that took place, and that was Trump speaking at the World Economic Forum, where he put global leaders on notice. What do I mean by that? Well, he called out Bank of America CEO for shutting conservatives down from using their services. And there was additional drama that you're not going to want to miss. So if you haven't seen that video for yourself, you can click on it because it's coming up right now.